The morning sun cast long shadows across the alien battlefield as Sergeant Marcus Chen adjusted his tactical gear one final time. The rocky terrain of Kepler 442b stretched endlessly before him, its purple-tinged atmosphere creating an otherworldly haze that made everything look like a fever dream. Behind him, the extraction zone hummed with nervous energy as soldiers prepared for what many believed would be their final mission on this god-forsaken planet. Chen had been fighting the Vraktar for 3 years now, ever since humanity's first contact with the hostile species had gone catastrophically wrong. What started as a diplomatic mission to establish trade relations had quickly devolved into a brutal interstellar war when the insectoid aliens mistook human peaceful gestures for signs of weakness. Now, after countless battles and devastating losses, the remnants of the 47th Colonial Defense Force were finally going home. The extraction point was a cleared area roughly the size of a football field. Surrounded by jagged rock formations that provided natural cover, Chen's squad of 12 soldiers had been tasked with securing the perimeter while they waited for the evacuation transport. It should have been routine. The Vraktar hadn't been spotted in this sector for weeks, and orbital scans showed no enemy activity within a 50-kilometer radius. Private Sarah Martinez approached Chen with her usual confident stride, her plasma rifle slung casually over her shoulder. At 19, she was the youngest member of the squad, but her quick reflexes and fearless attitude had earned her respect among the veteran soldiers. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and despite the grime and exhaustion that marked all their faces, her brown eyes still held a spark of defiance that reminded Chen why they were fighting this war. "Sarge, you really think they'll show up?" Martinez asked, gesturing toward the empty sky. "Command's been promising extraction for 2 months now. Half the guys think we're gonna die on this rock." Chen studied her face, noting the barely concealed anxiety beneath her bravado. He'd seen too many young soldiers break under the pressure of prolonged combat, and Martinez was walking a fine line. The girl reminded him of his own daughter back on Earth, headstrong, intelligent, and far too brave for her own good. "They'll come," Chen replied firmly, though privately he shared her doubts. "Command doesn't leave soldiers behind. That's not how we operate." Around them, the rest of the squad went about their preparations with mechanical efficiency. Corporal Davis cleaned his sniper rifle for the 10th time that morning, his weathered hands moving with practiced precision. Private Thompson checked and rechecked his ammunition count, while Specialist Rodriguez monitored their communication array for any updates from Orbital Command. The alien landscape seemed to mock their hopes of rescue. Strange, twisted trees dotted the horizon, their metallic bark gleaming in the pale sunlight. Occasionally, one of the planet's native creatures would skitter across the rocks, small crab-like things that the soldiers had nicknamed snappers for their tendency to bite anything that moved. Despite their harmless appearance, these creatures served as an early warning system. They always fled when Vraktar forces approached. As the hours passed, tension began to build among the squad. The promised extraction time of Oro 900 came and went without any sign of the transport. By noon, some of the soldiers were openly questioning whether they'd been abandoned. Chen did his best to maintain morale, but even he was beginning to wonder if something had gone wrong. Martinez found herself drawn to the edge of the extraction zone, where the ground dropped away into a deep ravine. The geological surveys indicated that this canyon system extended for hundreds of kilometers underground, creating a vast network of tunnels that the Vraktar had used to their advantage throughout the war. Standing there, gazing into the purple-tinged depths, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien atmosphere. "You shouldn't be standing so close to the edge." Chen's voice came from behind her. He'd approached silently, a skill that had kept him alive through countless battles. "The rock formations here are unstable. One wrong step and you'll be taking a very long fall." Martinez stepped back obediently, but her gaze remained fixed on the ravine. "Do you ever wonder what's down there, Sarge? I mean, we've been fighting these bugs for 3 years, but we still don't really know anything about them, where they come from, what they want, why they're so damn angry all the time." Chen joined her at a safer distance from the edge, his experienced eyes scanning the terrain for any signs of danger. "In my experience, kid, understanding your enemy is a luxury soldiers can't afford. All that matters is who's faster on the trigger when the shooting starts." But even as he spoke the words, Chen found himself wondering the same thing. The Vraktar were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Highly intelligent, technologically advanced, and utterly ruthless in combat. Their chitinous exoskeletons could deflect most small arms fire, and their razor-sharp claws could tear through combat armor like paper. Most disturbing of all was their apparent lack of fear. Vraktar warriors would charge into certain death without hesitation, as if individual survival meant nothing to them. The communication array suddenly crackled to life, causing every soldier in the extraction zone to freeze. Rodriguez's voice cut through the static. "Contact from Orbital Command. Transport is inbound, ETA 15 minutes. A cheer went up from the squad, and Chen felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. After 3 years of hell, they were finally going home. Martinez grinned at him, her earlier doubts apparently forgotten in the excitement of imminent rescue. But as Chen looked around at his soldiers, these brave men and women who had followed him through countless battles, he couldn't shake a nagging feeling that something was wrong. The extraction had been too easy, the enemy too quiet. In his 20 years of military service, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming warnings. He was about to share his concerns with Martinez when the distant rumble of engines reached their ears. Looking up, they could see a dark speck against the alien sky growing larger by the second. The extraction transport was finally here, just as Command had promised. "All right, people," Chen called out, his voice carrying across the extraction zone. "Form up for departure. And remember what I always tell you. Stay out of the way," the squad responded in unison, completing the familiar phrase that had become their unofficial motto. Chen nodded with satisfaction, but his hand never left his weapon. The transport ship descended through Kepler 442b's thin atmosphere like a metallic angel of salvation. Its hull gleamed dull silver against the purple sky, and the powerful engines sent waves of displaced air across the extraction zone, causing the strange alien vegetation to bend and sway. Chen watched through his tactical binoculars as the massive vessel approached, noting with professional interest the scorch marks and battle damage that decorated its armored exterior. The ship was a Meridian-class heavy transport, designed specifically for combat extractions in hostile environments. Its thick armor plating could withstand direct hits from Vraktar plasma cannons, while its defensive weapon systems provided cover for ground operations. Chen had seen these ships in action before, and their arrival usually meant the difference between life and death for stranded soldiers. As the transport settled onto the rocky ground with surprising grace for such a large vessel, its landing thrusters kicked up clouds of purple dust that forced the waiting soldiers to cover their faces. The whine of cooling engines gradually faded, replaced by the mechanical hiss of hydraulic systems and the steady hum of the ship's power core. Landing ramps began to extend from the vessel's belly, and Chen could see movement in the shadowed interior as the crew prepared for rapid boarding. "Beautiful sight, isn't it?" Martinez said, appearing at Chen's shoulder with her gear already packed and ready. Her earlier anxiety had been replaced by barely contained excitement, and she bounced slightly on her feet like a child waiting for Christmas morning. "I never thought I'd be so happy to see a bucket of bolts like that." Chen lowered his binoculars and began organizing his squad for departure. The loading process needed to be quick and efficient. Every minute they spent on the ground was another minute the Vraktar had to organize an attack. Even though the area had been quiet for weeks, Chen knew that alien forces could appear with terrifying speed when they chose to strike. "Davis, Rodriguez, take point positions near the ship," Chen ordered. "Thompson, Martinez, start moving the wounded to the loading area. Everyone else maintain perimeter security until we're ready to board." The squad moved with practiced efficiency, years of combat experience evident in their smooth coordination. The wounded soldiers, 3 men who had been injured in their last engagement with Vraktar forces, were carefully transferred to stretchers and carried toward the transport. Their injuries weren't life-threatening, but they needed proper medical attention that could only be provided aboard the ship or back on Earth. As Chen supervised the loading process, he noticed something odd about the transport crew. The men and women emerging from the ship moved with a strange, almost mechanical precision that seemed out of place even for military personnel. Their uniforms were standard issue, their equipment regulation, but something about their behavior triggered the same instinctive warnings that had kept Chen alive through 3 years of war. One of the crew members approached him, a tall, thin man with pale skin and unusually light blue eyes. His name tape read Lieutenant Morrison, and his rank insignia indicated he was the ship's executive officer. There was something unsettling about the way Morrison moved, as if he were concentrating very hard on appearing normal. "Sergeant Chen?" Morrison asked, his voice carrying a slight accent that Chen couldn't quite place. "I'm Lieutenant Morrison, executive officer of the transport vessel Redemption. We're here to evacuate your unit back to the orbital station." "Understood, sir," Chen replied, studying Morrison's face carefully. "We have 12 personnel ready for immediate departure, plus 3 wounded who'll need medical attention during transit." Morrison nodded slowly, his pale eyes scanning the assembled soldiers with an intensity that made Chen uncomfortable. "Excellent. We'll have you off this planet within the hour. I trust your mission here was successful?" The question seemed innocent enough, but Chen detected something beneath Morrison's polite tone, a hunger for information that went beyond normal curiosity. Combat soldiers learned to recognize when someone was fishing for intelligence, and Morrison's casual inquiry set off every alarm bell in Chen's head. "We completed our assigned objectives," Chen answered carefully, providing no specific details about their recent operations. "My squad is ready to depart on your orders, sir." Around them, the loading process continued without incident. The wounded soldiers were being transferred to the ship's medical bay, while the rest of the squad gathered their equipment and prepared for boarding. Martinez caught Chen's eye and gave him a thumbs up, indicating that her section was ready to move. But Chen's attention remained focused on Morrison and the other crew members. Now that he was looking more carefully, he noticed several disturbing details. Their movements were too coordinated, as if they were following some predetermined choreography. Their equipment, while regulation, showed no signs of wear or personalization that marked genuine military gear. Most telling of all, none of them displayed the 1,000-yard stare that marked veterans of prolonged combat. "Is there a problem, Sergeant?" Morrison asked, apparently noticing Chen's scrutiny. "You seem concerned about something." Chen forced himself to maintain a neutral expression, though his hand drifted instinctively toward his sidearm. "No problem, sir. Just standard security protocols. We've been fighting in this sector for a long time, and caution becomes a habit." Morrison smiled, but the expression didn't reach his pale eyes. "Of course. Caution is what keeps soldiers alive. Speaking of which, I notice your unit has been particularly effective against Fraktar forces in recent weeks. Our intelligence reports indicate several successful engagements that resulted in significant enemy casualties." Now Chen was certain something was wrong. Morrison's knowledge was too detailed, too specific for a transport officer who should have been focused solely on extraction procedures. Combat intelligence was classified at levels far above Morrison's apparent rank, and his interest in Chen's unit's recent operations went beyond professional necessity. "Sir, with respect, I'm not authorized to discuss operational details without proper clearance codes," Chen replied, his voice taking on a harder edge. "Perhaps we should focus on completing the evacuation." Morrison's smile widened slightly, and for a moment Chen could have sworn he saw something predatory in the man's expression. "Of course, Sergeant. Forgive my curiosity. It's just that your unit's tactical innovations have been quite impressive. The way you've adapted to fight an enemy that most humans find terrifying shows remarkable flexibility." The comment sent a chill down Chen's spine. No human officer would refer to their own species in such detached terms. Combined with Morrison's unnatural behavior and the crew's mechanical movements, it painted a picture that Chen desperately didn't want to believe. As if sensing his growing suspicion, Morrison stepped closer, lowering his voice to a confidential whisper. "Tell me, Sergeant, what is it about the Fraktar that makes them so effective in combat? Is it their physical capabilities, their technology, or perhaps something more fundamental?" Chen's blood ran cold as the implications hit him like a physical blow. The transport crew wasn't human at all. Somehow, impossibly, the Fraktar had managed to infiltrate their evacuation, disguising themselves as rescue personnel to get close to valuable intelligence assets. The realization explained everything: the mechanical movements, the unnatural behavior, the inappropriate questions about combat operations. But if the crew were Fraktar in disguise, what had happened to the real transport? And more importantly, what did these aliens want with his squad that was worth such an elaborate deception? Chen glanced around the extraction zone, noting with growing alarm that his soldiers were now scattered and vulnerable, many of them already aboard the fake transport. Martinez was near the loading ramp, chatting excitedly with one of the disguised aliens, completely unaware of the danger surrounding her. The sergeant's mind raced as he considered his options. He could try to warn his squad, but that would likely trigger immediate violence and put his people at even greater risk. He could play along and hope for an opportunity to strike when the aliens revealed their true intentions. Or he could act now, hoping that surprise would give him the advantage he needed to protect his soldiers. Chen's training kicked in as his mind processed the impossible situation unfolding before him. Years of combat experience had taught him to think clearly under pressure, and right now he needed every ounce of that skill to keep his squad alive. The fake Morrison continued to watch him with those unnaturally pale eyes, apparently waiting for some kind of response to his probing questions about Vraktar combat effectiveness. The enemy's strength comes from their coordination, Chen said carefully, buying time while he assessed the tactical situation. They fight as a collective unit rather than individuals, which makes them unpredictable in small engagements. Morrison nodded approvingly, and Chen noticed that several other crew members had subtly moved closer to their conversation. Their positioning was too perfect, too coordinated for humans who should be focused on loading procedures. Each of them maintained the same artificial smile and mechanical movements that had first alerted Chen to their true nature. Across the extraction zone, Chen could see his soldiers continuing their boarding preparations, completely unaware of the danger surrounding them. Martinez was already halfway up the loading ramp, her gear slung over her shoulder and her face bright with anticipation of finally leaving this hellish planet. Davis and Rodriguez maintained their perimeter positions, but their attention was focused outward on potential threats from the alien landscape, rather than the enemies already among them. "Sergeant," Morrison said, his voice taking on a more urgent tone, "we need to begin departure procedures immediately. Our orbital scans indicate possible Vraktar movement in this sector, and we don't want to be caught on the ground if they decide to attack." The irony of the statement almost made Chen laugh despite the deadly seriousness of their situation. Here were Vraktar forces warning him about Vraktar forces, using humanity's own fears against them to maintain their deception. It was a brilliant strategy, and one that would have worked perfectly if Chen hadn't noticed the subtle tells that marked these creatures as imposters. "Of course, sir," Chen replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. "I'll gather my remaining personnel and have them aboard within 10 minutes. Morrison's smile broadened, revealing teeth that were just slightly too white and too perfect for someone who had supposedly been serving aboard a combat vessel for months. "Excellent. And Sergeant, make sure to bring all your equipment. Command is particularly interested in any captured Vraktar technology your unit might have acquired during your operations." Chen felt his blood turn to ice. His squad had indeed captured several pieces of alien technology during their recent missions. Advanced communication devices, weapon components, and tactical data that could prove invaluable to human forces. If these disguised Vraktar were after that intelligence, it meant they had detailed knowledge of his unit's activities that could only have come from high-level sources. The implications were staggering. How long had the enemy been monitoring human communications? How many other operations had been compromised? And if they could disguise themselves so convincingly as humans, what other infiltrations might have already taken place? "We'll bring everything, sir," Chen said, his mind racing as he tried to formulate a plan. "Some of the equipment is quite sensitive, though. It might be better if my technical specialist handled the transfer personally." "That won't be necessary," Morrison replied quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Our ship has specialized containment facilities for alien technology. Your equipment will be quite safe in our care." Chen nodded and began walking toward his scattered soldiers, ostensibly to organize their final boarding procedures. In reality, he was positioning himself to better assess the tactical situation and look for opportunities to warn his people without triggering immediate violence. The fake crew members shadowed his movements with predatory patience, clearly confident that their deception remained intact. As he approached Rodriguez's position near the communication array, Chen caught the corporal's eye and gave him a subtle hand signal that they had developed during their long deployment. To any observer, it would look like a casual gesture, but Rodriguez immediately understood that something was wrong and began discreetly alerting the other soldiers through their private communication network. "Rodriguez," Chen said aloud, "start packing up the comm gear. We'll be boarding in 5 minutes." "Roger that, Sarge," Rodriguez replied. but Chen could see the subtle tension in his posture that indicated he had received and understood the warning signal. The corporal's fingers moved quickly over his equipment, ostensibly shutting down systems but actually activating emergency protocols that would alert Orbital Command to their situation. Chen continued his circuit of the extraction zone, casually approaching each of his soldiers and passing along the coded warnings that indicated immediate danger. Years of fighting together had created an almost telepathic understanding between the squad members, and each man and woman quickly grasped the severity of their situation without giving any outward sign of alarm. Martinez proved to be the most challenging to reach, as she had already moved well inside the transport's cargo area. Chen could see her through the open hatch, excitedly examining the ship's interior and chatting with more of the disguised aliens. Her position made her the most vulnerable member of the squad, isolated from the others and surrounded by enemies who could overwhelm her before help could arrive. "Martinez," Chen called out, hoping to draw her back outside. "I need you to help Thompson with the heavy equipment before we board." She waved, acknowledging the order, and began making her way back toward the ramp. But one of the fake crew members intercepted her with a polite suggestion that she remain aboard to help with the cargo securing procedures. Chen watched with growing alarm as Martinez found herself gently but firmly guided deeper into the ship's interior, effectively cutting off her escape route. The situation was rapidly becoming untenable. Chen had managed to alert most of his squad to the danger, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned by enemies who held multiple advantages. The disguised Vraktar controlled the transport, had isolated one of his soldiers, and maintained the element of surprise in terms of timing any attack they might be planning. Morrison appeared at Chen's shoulder with that same unnatural smile, apparently having noticed the sergeant's growing agitation. "Is everything proceeding smoothly, Sergeant? You seem distracted." "Just standard pre-departure procedures, sir," Chen replied, though he could hear the strain in his own voice, "making sure we don't leave anything important behind." "Of course," Morrison said, his pale eyes studying Chen's face with uncomfortable intensity. "Though I should mention that our departure window is quite limited. If we don't leave within the next few minutes, we may have to wait several hours for the next safe opportunity." Chen recognized the statement for what it was, a subtle threat designed to pressure him into compliance. The aliens were growing impatient with their deception and wanted to conclude whatever operation they had planned before their true nature was discovered. Unfortunately for them, Chen had already seen through their disguise, and now it was simply a matter of choosing the right moment to act. Around the extraction zone, Chen could see his soldiers subtly adjusting their positions, preparing for the fight that was now inevitable. Davis had repositioned his sniper rifle to cover the transport's main entrance, while Thompson and Rodriguez had taken up flanking positions that would allow them to catch the enemy in a crossfire. The movements were subtle enough that the disguised aliens hadn't yet realized their deception had been compromised, but Chen knew that this tenuous standoff couldn't last much longer. Soon either he would have to make his move, or the Vraktar would decide to abandon their charade and take what they wanted by force. Either way, the next few minutes would determine whether his squad survived to see another day. The tension in the extraction zone had reached a breaking point, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Chen could feel sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool alien atmosphere, his hand resting casually on his sidearm, while he maintained the pretense of normal evacuation procedures. Morrison continued to watch him with those unsettling pale eyes, and Chen was increasingly certain that the creature knew its deception had been discovered. The moment of truth came when Martinez's voice suddenly cut through the air from inside the transport, sharp with alarm and confusion. "Sarge, there's something wrong with the medical bay. These wounded soldiers, they're not our guys." Chen's blood ran cold as he realized what Martinez had discovered. The 3 wounded soldiers who had been loaded first, men from his own squad who had been injured in recent battles, had somehow been replaced with strangers. Or worse, they might have been eliminated entirely, with the disguised Vraktar using their equipment and identification to further sell their deception. Morrison's artificial smile finally slipped, revealing something cold and predatory beneath the human facade. "How unfortunate," he said, his accent becoming more pronounced and taking on an alien quality that made Chen's skin crawl. "It seems your young soldier is quite observant." Chen didn't waste time with words. His combat instincts took over, and he dove to the side while simultaneously drawing his plasma pistol and triggering the emergency alert signal that would warn his scattered soldiers. The sharp whistle of the alarm cut through the alien air like a blade, instantly transforming the seemingly peaceful extraction zone into a battlefield. Morrison's response was inhuman in its speed and brutality. The thing that had been masquerading as a human officer shed its disguise in a matter of seconds, its pale skin splitting and peeling away to reveal the chitinous black exoskeleton of a Vraktar warrior. Its limbs elongated and reshaped themselves into razor-sharp claws, while its head transformed into the insectoid nightmare that had haunted human soldiers for 3 years. The creature's first swipe would have taken Chen's head off if he hadn't already been moving. As it was, the claws passed through the space where he had been standing only a microsecond before, close enough that he could feel the wind from their passage. Chen rolled behind a nearby rock formation and came up firing, his plasma bolts illuminating the battlefield with brilliant blue-white flashes. Around the extraction zone, the rest of the fake crew abandoned their human disguises with horrifying synchronization. What had appeared to be 12 human transport personnel revealed themselves as a full Vraktar assault squad, their black carapaces gleaming in the alien sunlight. The transformation was like watching a nightmare come to life, as familiar human faces melted away to reveal the clicking mandibles and compound eyes of humanity's most feared enemies. Davis's sniper rifle cracked from his elevated position, and one of the Vraktar warriors stumbled as a high-velocity round punched through its thorax. The wound would have been instantly fatal to a human, but the alien creature merely hissed in pain and continued its advance. These weren't the standard Vraktar drones that most human soldiers encountered. These were elite warriors with enhanced armor and improved combat capabilities. Chen's tactical training kicked in as he assessed the rapidly evolving battlefield. His squad was outnumbered but not outgunned, and they had the advantage of knowing the terrain after weeks of defending this position. More importantly, they were fighting for their lives with the desperate ferocity that made human soldiers so effective against seemingly superior alien forces. Thompson, Rodriguez, flank left, Chen shouted over the chaos of plasma fire and alien war cries. Davis, keep them pinned down. I'm going for Martinez. The transport had become a death trap, with several Vraktar warriors moving to secure the interior, while others engaged Chen's soldiers in the open. Martinez was somewhere inside that mechanical hell, possibly already captured or worse. Chen knew that every second he delayed meant a greater chance that his youngest soldier would become another casualty of this endless war. Rodriguez and Thompson moved with practiced efficiency, their plasma rifles laying down a steady stream of covering fire that forced the aliens to take cover behind the transport's landing struts. The Vraktar were incredibly fast and deadly in close combat, but they had learned to respect human energy weapons after 3 years of brutal conflict. A direct hit from a plasma rifle could punch through even their enhanced armor, and Chen's soldiers were some of the best marksmen in the Colonial Defense Force. Chen sprinted toward the transport's loading ramp, dodging plasma bolts from alien weapons that left glowing craters in the rocky ground. The Vraktar had their own energy weapons, sleek, organic-looking devices that fired concentrated beams of superheated plasma, but their aim suffered when they were under pressure from multiple human positions. As he reached the base of the loading ramp, Chen could hear the sounds of combat from inside the transport. Martinez's voice rose above the noise, sharp with determination and fury rather than fear. The girl was still alive and still fighting, which meant there was still time to reach her. The interior of the transport was a maze of corridors and compartments, designed for rapid troop movement rather than defensive fighting. Chen moved carefully, his weapon ready, knowing that Vraktar warriors could emerge from any shadow or doorway. The artificial lighting cast strange shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own, and the hum of the ship's power systems masked the subtle sounds that might warn of approaching enemies. He found Martinez in what had been the medical bay, locked in desperate hand-to-hand combat with a Vraktar warrior that had cornered her behind an equipment rack. Her plasma rifle lay broken on the floor nearby, obviously damaged in the initial struggle, but she had managed to draw her combat knife and was using it with deadly effectiveness to keep the alien at bay. The Vraktar warrior was bleeding from several wounds where Martinez had managed to find gaps in its armor, but it was also driving her steadily backward toward a dead end. Chen could see that she was tiring, her movements becoming less precise as exhaustion and blood loss took their toll. The alien, meanwhile, seemed almost untouched by its injuries, its alien physiology allowing it to fight effectively despite damage that would incapacitate a human. Chen didn't hesitate. He put 3 plasma bolts into the creature's back, the superheated energy punching through its armor and dropping it to the deck in a smoking heap. Martinez looked up at him with relief and gratitude, but also with the hard-edged determination that had kept her alive through 3 years of war. "Sarge," she gasped, wiping alien blood from her face. "The wounded. They replaced them with Vraktar infiltrators. This whole thing was a setup from the beginning." Chen helped her to her feet, checking her for serious injuries while keeping one eye on the corridor behind them. The sounds of battle from outside were intensifying, which meant his soldiers were still holding their own against the alien assault squad. But he knew that situation could change quickly, especially if more Vraktar forces were en route to the extraction zone. "Can you move?" he asked Martinez, noting the deep gash on her left arm where alien claws had found their mark. "I'm fine," she replied, though her pale complexion suggested otherwise. "Let's get out of here before more of these things show up." But even as they prepared to leave the medical bay, Chen could hear new sounds echoing through the transport's corridors, the distinctive clicking and chittering that marked Vraktar communication. More aliens were moving through the ship, apparently responding to the death of their comrade. The sergeant realized with growing alarm that what he had initially taken for a small infiltration team might actually be a much larger force. The narrow corridors of the transport became a nightmare maze as Chen and Martinez fought their way toward the exit. The ship's interior had been designed for human use, but the Vraktar had somehow modified it to serve their purposes, adding concealed weapon emplacements and reinforced bulkheads that turned every intersection into a potential killing ground. Alien technology hummed behind the walls, creating an unsettling vibration that seemed to penetrate their very bones. Chen moved with practiced efficiency, his plasma pistol cutting through the artificial twilight of the ship's emergency lighting. Behind him, Martinez clutched a backup weapon she had salvaged from the medical bay, her injured arm wrapped in makeshift bandages torn from her uniform. Despite her wounds, she moved with the fluid grace of a veteran soldier, covering their rear approach while Chen navigated the unfamiliar layout. The first Vraktar they encountered was waiting in ambush at a T-junction, its chitinous form pressed against the ceiling in a position that would have been impossible for any human to maintain. The creature dropped like a mechanical spider, its claws extended and mandibles clicking with alien fury. Chen's shot took its center mass, but not before its dying swipe opened a gash across his chest armor that would have been fatal if not for the reinforced plating. "These aren't regular Vraktar," Martinez observed as they stepped over the smoking corpse. "Look at the armor modifications, the way they move. These are special forces, aren't they?" Chen nodded grimly as he examined the fallen alien. The creature's exoskeleton bore intricate markings that he recognized from intelligence briefings as signs of elite status within Vraktar military hierarchy. These weren't the standard drones that human forces usually encountered, but veteran warriors with enhanced equipment and specialized training. The implications were disturbing. This operation was far more important to the aliens than a simple extraction ambush. The sounds of battle from outside had taken on a different quality, with longer pauses between bursts of weapons fire that suggested both sides were running low on ammunition and energy. Chen knew his soldiers were professionals who could make every shot count, but they were also vastly outnumbered if his suspicions about the true size of the Vraktar force proved correct. As they approached what appeared to be the main cargo hold, Chen held up a hand to signal Martinez to stop. Through a partially open blast door, he could see movement in the shadows, multiple Vraktar forms moving with coordinated precision around what looked like human-designed equipment. The aliens had apparently been using the transport as a mobile command center, gathering intelligence and coordinating operations across multiple systems. "Sarge," Martinez whispered, pointing toward a bank of monitors visible through the door gap. "Those displays, they're showing human military installations, orbital platforms, supply depots, even Earth's defensive grid." Chen felt his blood run cold as he realized the true scope of what they had stumbled into. This wasn't just an ambush or even an intelligence-gathering operation. It was reconnaissance for a major Vraktar offensive that could threaten humanity's core systems. The aliens had been using disguised infiltrators to map human defenses, identify weaknesses, and prepare for what might be the final phase of the war. The strategic implications were staggering. If the Vraktar had detailed intelligence on Earth's defenses and the locations of key military installations, they could launch surgical strikes that would cripple humanity's ability to resist further alien expansion. Billions of human lives hung in the balance, and Chen's small squad had accidentally become the only thing standing between the aliens and their ultimate victory. A new sound reached their ears from deeper within the ship, the distinctive whine of Vraktar communication equipment, powering up for long-range transmission. Chen realized with growing urgency that the aliens were preparing to upload their intelligence data to the main Vraktar fleet, probably in response to the compromise of their infiltration operation. Once that data reached Alien Command, Earth's fate would be sealed. "We have to stop that transmission," Chen told Martinez, checking his weapon's power levels. "Whatever it takes, we can't let them send that intelligence data to their fleet." Martinez nodded, her young face set with determination despite the pain from her wounds. "What about the others? Rodriguez, Thompson, Davis, they're still fighting out there." Chen weighed their options quickly. His soldiers were professional warriors who could take care of themselves, but the intelligence data represented a threat to every human in the galaxy. Sometimes a sergeant had to make impossible choices, and this was one of those moments when individual lives had to be weighed against the survival of the species. "They'll understand," he said finally. "This is bigger than any of us." They moved carefully toward the cargo hold, using the ship's structural supports and equipment racks for concealment. Through the blast door gap, Chen could see at least 6 Vraktar warriors working around sophisticated communication equipment that pulsed with alien energy. The transmission was already beginning, streams of data flowing through quantum channels toward distant alien receivers. Chen's tactical mind quickly assessed their options. A direct assault would be suicide against 6 elite Vraktar in a confined space, especially with only 2 humans and limited ammunition. But the communication equipment appeared to have vulnerable power conduits running along the ceiling, protected only by lightweight access panels that human weapons could penetrate. He gestured for Martinez to position herself near the door controls while he lined up shots on the power conduits. If they could disrupt the transmission at its source, they might be able to prevent the intelligence data from reaching its destination. It was a desperate plan with little chance of success, but it was the only option available to them. The first plasma bolt punched through an access panel and into the conduit beyond, sending showers of sparks cascading onto the Vraktar below. The aliens reacted with inhuman speed, their forms flowing like liquid shadow as they sought cover and began returning fire. Chen had to throw himself behind a support beam as superheated plasma scorched the air where he had been standing. Martinez triggered the blast door controls, sealing the cargo hold and cutting off the aliens' primary escape route. The heavy barrier wouldn't hold them for long, but it might buy enough time to complete their sabotage mission. Her backup weapon added its fire to Chen's, targeting additional power conduits and forcing the Vraktar to divide their attention between returning fire and protecting their equipment. The battle in the cargo hold was unlike anything Chen had experienced in 3 years of war. The confined space amplified every sound, turning weapons fire into deafening thunderclaps and alien war cries into nightmarish shrieks. The air filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burned electronics as human and alien weapons tore through the ship's interior systems. One of the Vraktar warriors attempted to flank their position by climbing along the cargo hold's walls, its clawed feet finding purchase on surfaces that would have been impossible for humans to navigate. Chen tracked its movement and put 2 shots into its thorax, but not before it managed to rake its claws across Martinez's shoulder, adding fresh wounds to her growing collection of injuries. The young soldier gasped in pain but continued firing, her shots methodically targeting the communication equipment's most vulnerable components. Alien technology sparked and failed under the assault, but Chen could see that some of the data transmission was still getting through. They needed to destroy the primary transmitter, a massive piece of equipment that dominated the center of the cargo hold like some organic, technological altar. As if reading his thoughts, Martinez suddenly broke from cover and sprinted toward the transmitter. Her remaining ammunition focused on its base components. Vraktar plasma fire followed her across the open space, but her erratic movement and the confusion of battle kept her alive long enough to reach her target. Chen watched in horror and admiration As his youngest soldier emptied her weapon into the transmitter's core systems, her face illuminated by the brilliant flashes of failing alien technology. The device began to collapse in on itself, its quantum transmission systems overloading in a cascade of energy that would make transmission impossible. But the effort cost Martinez everything she had left. A Vraktar warrior emerged from the smoke behind her, its claws raised for a killing blow that Chen couldn't prevent from his position across the hold. Time seemed to slow as Chen watched the Vraktar warrior's claws descend toward Martinez's exposed back. His plasma pistol was already tracking the creature, but the angle was wrong, the distance too great and his ammunition nearly exhausted. For one terrible moment it seemed that the young soldier's sacrifice would be completed by her death, another casualty in humanity's endless struggle against alien aggression. Then the cargo hold's secondary blast door exploded inward with a thunderous crash, and Rodriguez burst through the smoking wreckage like an avenging angel. The corporal's heavy plasma rifle spoke once, its concentrated beam punching completely through the Vraktar warrior and dropping it in a smoldering heap before its claws could complete their deadly arc. "Sorry we're late to the party, Sarge," Rodriguez shouted over the chaos as Thompson and Davis poured through the breach behind him. "Had to deal with some uninvited guests outside before we could join you." The arrival of the rest of his squad transformed the tactical situation instantly. What had been a desperate holding action became a coordinated assault as 4 experienced soldiers brought their combined firepower to bear on the remaining Vraktar forces. The aliens, caught between Chen's position and the new arrivals, found themselves trapped in a crossfire that even their enhanced armor couldn't survive. Davis's sniper rifle cracked twice in rapid succession, each shot finding vulnerable joints in Vraktar exoskeletons with mechanical precision. Thompson's assault rifle chattered on full automatic, laying down suppressing fire that kept the aliens pinned while Rodriguez methodically picked them off with his heavy weapon. Within moments, the cargo hold fell silent except for the crackling of burning electronics and the hiss of cooling plasma bolts. Chen rushed to Martinez's side, finding her conscious but barely standing, her face pale from blood loss and exhaustion. The destruction of the transmitter had cost her everything she had left, but her eyes still held that fierce determination that had kept her fighting through 3 years of hell. "Did we stop it?" she asked weakly, gesturing toward the smoking ruins of the alien communication equipment. "Did we stop the transmission?" Chen examined the wreckage of the primary transmitter, noting with satisfaction that its quantum cores had completely collapsed. Whatever intelligence data the Vraktar had gathered would remain trapped on this ship, unable to reach their fleet commanders. It was a victory, but one that had come at a tremendous cost. "We stopped it," he confirmed, helping Martinez sit down against a support beam. "The transmission is dead and this intelligence won't be reaching anyone." Rodriguez appeared at Chen's shoulder, his weathered face grim with concern. "Sarge, we need to move. There's a whole lot more where these came from, and they're not going to be happy when they realize what happened here." Chen looked up from treating Martinez's wounds, his tactical mind already shifting to their new crisis. "How many more?" Thompson counted at least 30 contacts moving through the canyon system, Davis reported, his sniper's eyes constantly scanning for new threats. Professional assessment? This transport was just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole Vraktar infiltration force down there, probably with enough firepower to level everything in a 50-kilometer radius. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. If Davis was right, then they hadn't stumbled into a simple ambush or intelligence operation. They had discovered a major alien staging area, possibly the launch point for the invasion of Earth itself. The transport had been just one element of a much larger operation, and its compromise would bring the full weight of Vraktar military might down on their position. "How long before they reach us?" Chen asked, mentally calculating their limited options. 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky," Thompson replied. "But that's assuming they don't have air support or heavy weapons." "If they do." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Chen's squad was professional and well-trained, but they were still just 5 soldiers with limited ammunition and no heavy equipment. Against a force of 30 elite Vraktar warriors with supporting weapons, they wouldn't last 5 minutes in open combat. Martinez struggled to her feet, ignoring Chen's protests about her injuries. "There has to be something we can do. We can't just let them regroup and continue their operation." Chen looked around the cargo hold, his mind racing as he assessed their resources. The transport itself was obviously alien technology, but it had been disguised to appear human, which suggested the Vraktar had detailed knowledge of human systems and equipment. If they could figure out how to use that knowledge against the aliens. His gaze fell on the ship's power core, visible through a partially open access hatch near the rear of the cargo hold. The reactor was a hybrid design, combining human engineering with alien technology to create something that could pass superficial inspection while providing the enhanced capabilities the Vraktar required for their operation. Rodriguez, Chen said slowly, an idea beginning to form in his mind. You still remember those demolition courses from basic training? The corporal's eyes lit up with understanding. You want to turn this thing into a bomb. Not just a bomb, Chen replied, moving toward the power core access hatch. The biggest bomb this planet has ever seen. If we can overload the reactor while the main force is in the canyon, we might be able to take out their entire operation in one shot. Thompson whistled softly as he grasped the implications of Chen's plan. That's a hell of a gamble, Sarge. We don't know enough about alien technology to predict how big the explosion would be. Could be enough to level the canyon, or it could just make a really expensive firecracker. Either way, we won't be around to see it, Davis added pragmatically. A reactor overload that size would vaporize everything within several kilometers. There's no way we could get clear in time. Chen looked around at his soldiers, these brave men and women who had followed him through 3 years of war, who had trusted him to keep them alive when everything else had gone wrong. They deserved better than a suicide mission on some forgotten alien world, but sometimes fate didn't offer better options. I'm not ordering anyone to stay, he said quietly. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to try making it to the real extraction zone can go now with my blessing. The response was immediate and unanimous. Rodriguez spat into the alien dust and hefted his demolition kit. Thompson checked his weapon and took up a defensive position near the blast door. Davis found an elevated firing position that would let him cover their approach routes. Martinez, despite her wounds, moved to assist with the technical work. Guess that settles it, Rodriguez said with a grim smile. Always wanted to see what would happen if you fed a reactor nothing but pure energy feedback. Looks like I'm about to find out. As his squad prepared for their final mission, Chen felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. They had started this deployment as soldiers following orders, but they would end it as heroes making the ultimate sacrifice to protect their species. It wasn't the ending any of them had planned, but it was an ending they could face with pride. The sound of approaching Vraktar forces echoed through the canyon, growing closer with each passing minute. Chen's soldiers worked with quiet efficiency, turning their final position into a fortress that would hold long enough to complete their mission. Outside, the alien landscape waited in purple-tinged silence, unaware that the fate of 2 civilizations would soon be decided by 5 humans and 1 overloaded reactor. The sound of the approaching Vraktar force grew steadily louder as Chen's squad made their final preparations. Rodriguez worked with methodical precision over the transport's hybrid power core, his demolition training allowing him to identify the key feedback loops that would turn the reactor into a devastating weapon. The alien technology was more sophisticated than anything he had worked with before, but the underlying principles of energy containment and controlled release remained the same across species. 10 more minutes, Rodriguez reported, sweat beading on his forehead as he carefully rerouted power conduits. Maybe 15 if I can stabilize the containment field long enough to build up maximum pressure. After that, this whole canyon is going to become a very large crater. Chen nodded and turned his attention to the defensive preparations. Thompson and Davis had established overlapping fields of fire that would force any attacking Vraktar into carefully selected kill zones, while Martinez, despite her injuries, had rigged several improvised explosive devices using components salvaged from the destroyed communication equipment. Their position was as strong as 5 soldiers could make it, but Chen knew it wouldn't hold for long against 30 elite alien warriors. The first Vraktar scouts appeared, at the edge of the extraction zone exactly 22 minutes after Rodriguez had begun his work on the reactor. Chen watched through his tactical scope as the alien forms moved with inhuman grace across the rocky terrain, their chitinous armor gleaming in the purple-tinged sunlight. These weren't the standard Vraktar drones that most human soldiers encountered, but veteran warriors whose every movement spoke of deadly experience and tactical sophistication. Contact, Davis reported from his sniper position. Multiple hostiles approaching from the canyon mouth. Range 800 meters and closing. Chen felt the familiar calm that always settled over him in the moments before combat. After 3 years of war, the prospect of death held no terror for him. Only the possibility of failure, of letting his soldiers down when they needed him most. He thought briefly of his daughter back on Earth, wondering if she would ever know how her father had died, then pushed the distraction aside and focused on the tactical situation. "Remember," he said into his communication headset, "we just need to buy Rodriguez time to complete the overload. Every minute we hold them gives us a better chance of taking out their entire force." The Vraktar advance began with a probing attack designed to test the human defenses. 3 alien warriors moved forward in a coordinated rush, using the rocky terrain for cover while their companions provided supporting fire from concealed positions. Davis's sniper rifle cracked once and the lead Vraktar stumbled as a high-velocity round punched through its thorax armor, but the creature continued its advance despite the grievous wound. Thompson's assault rifle opened up in controlled bursts, its plasma bolts forcing the aliens to take cover behind a cluster of metallic trees. The Vraktar responded with their own weapons, sleek organic devices that fired concentrated beams of superheated energy. The exchange of fire lit up the extraction zone like a deadly light show, each shot carrying enough power to vaporize human flesh or alien chitin with equal efficiency. Martinez triggered one of her improvised explosives as a Vraktar warrior attempted to flank their position, the blast sending alien body parts tumbling across the rocky ground. But even as that threat was eliminated, more aliens appeared at the extraction zone's perimeter, their numbers seeming to multiply with each passing minute. "Sarge," Rodriguez called from inside the transport. "I'm reading massive energy buildup in the reactor core. We're past the point of no return now. This thing is going to blow whether we want it to or not." Chen acknowledged the report while putting 3 plasma bolts into a Vraktar warrior that had gotten too close to Thompson's position. The alien went down hard, its exoskeleton cracked and smoking, but 2 more immediately took its place. The intensity of the alien assault was increasing, exponentially as more Vraktar forces emerged from the canyon system. The battle raged with savage intensity, as both sides fought for control of the extraction zone. Human plasma weapons carved through alien armor while Vraktar energy beams left glowing craters in the rocky ground. The air filled with the acrid smell of burned electronics and the metallic tang of alien blood, while the constant crack of weapons fire echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. Davis's position came under concentrated attack as a squad of Vraktar warriors attempted to eliminate the sniper who had been making their advance so costly. Chen watched in horror as the veteran soldier's position disappeared in a hail of alien plasma fire, his fate unknown in the chaos of battle. A moment later, Thompson's rifle fell silent as he was overwhelmed by 3 Vraktar, who had managed to breach the perimeter defenses. "Martinez, fall back to the transport," Chen ordered, realizing that their defensive line was collapsing under the weight of superior numbers. "We'll make our final stand there." The young soldier moved with surprising speed despite her injuries, laying down covering fire that allowed Chen to disengage from his position and begin a fighting withdrawal toward the ship. Behind them, Vraktar warriors poured into the extraction zone like a dark tide, their alien war cries echoing off the canyon walls with predatory triumph. Rodriguez met them at the transport's entrance, his face grim with the knowledge of what was coming. "Reactors critical," he reported, maybe 5 minutes before the containment field collapses completely. "After that, we're looking at an explosion that'll be visible from orbit." Chen nodded and took up a defensive position at the ship's entrance, his plasma pistol picking off Vraktar warriors as they approached across the open ground. Martinez positioned herself to cover the flanking approaches, while Rodriguez continued his work on the reactor systems, fine-tuning the overload to achieve maximum destructive effect. The final assault came like a hurricane of alien fury. Vraktar warriors seemed to emerge from every shadow and crevice, their numbers far exceeding the original estimates as the full scope of their infiltration operation became clear. These weren't just the advanced scouts of an invasion force, they were the invasion force itself, a carefully planned operation designed to establish alien control over this strategic system. Chen's plasma pistol ran dry, just as a massive Vraktar warrior reached the transport's entrance. The alien was larger than any he had encountered before, its exoskeleton covered with intricate markings that suggested command rank within the Vraktar hierarchy. Its mandibles clicked with what might have been alien laughter as it raised its claws for a killing blow. Martinez's backup weapon spoke once, its concentrated beam punching through the creature's thorax and dropping it at Chen's feet. But the effort left her exposed to return fire from other aliens, and Chen watched helplessly as Vraktar plasma found its target. The young soldier crumpled to the deck, her weapon falling from nerveless fingers. 30 seconds, Rodriguez shouted over the chaos of battle. Reactor containment is failing. Chen knelt beside Martinez, finding her still conscious but fading fast. Her eyes met his with that same fierce determination that had marked her from their first meeting, and her lips moved in words he had to strain to hear over the approaching alien forces. "Tell them we held the line, Sarge," she whispered. "Tell them we didn't let the bastards through." Chen squeezed her hand as the transport began to vibrate with the growing instability of the overloading reactor. Around them, Vraktar warriors pressed closer, their alien triumph almost within reach. But they had underestimated the determination of 5 human soldiers who refused to surrender, even in the face of certain death. The reactor's containment field collapsed with a sound like the universe tearing itself apart. For one brief moment, Chen saw the extraction zone illuminated in brilliant white light as the transport's hybrid power core released all its contained energy in a single, devastating pulse. The explosion expanded outward at near-light speed, vaporizing alien and human alike in a fireball that could be seen from the orbital platforms. When the light faded, the extraction zone was gone, replaced by a perfectly circular crater that extended deep into Kepler 442b's crust. The Vraktar infiltration force had been completely eliminated, their invasion plans destroyed along with the intelligence they had gathered. Sergeant Marcus Chen and his squad had completed their final mission, holding the line when it mattered most. In the days that followed, Orbital Command would discover the full scope of what had been prevented. The destroyed alien equipment contained detailed plans for a coordinated assault on Earth's defensive systems, intelligence that would have made human resistance impossible. The sacrifice of 5 soldiers had saved billions of lives and preserved humanity's future among the stars. The crater on Kepler 442b became a monument to their memory, a reminder that sometimes the most important battles are fought by those who never expected to be heroes. And in the archives of the Colonial Defense Force, Sergeant Chen's final words would be preserved for future generations. "Stay out of the way," he had always told his soldiers, "and let the professionals handle it." They had stayed out of the way of retreat, of surrender, of defeat. Instead, they had chosen the harder path, the path of sacrifice, of duty, of ultimate victory achieved through ultimate loss. It was a chai,